Good morning and welcome to NCBA Money Mastery, where we teach you how to make your money work for you. My name is Willy Mahumu, and here at NCBA, we remain excited about numbers because I'm sure by now you know that the numbers that matter to you always matter to us. And given that this is the final episode of Season 3 Money Mastery, let's talk about some numbers that you may want to know about the entire season. These are numbers that will sum up the entire season. Number one, we had a total of 8 exciting money mastery topics. Number two, we received a total of 600 comments during our live shows. And finally, we had a total of 25,385 guests tune in on our live shows, and we are very appreciative of that. Now, in this final episode, we'd like to do it a bit differently from how we've been conducting our usual episodes. Today, we get to hear real life stories from someone special who has been impacted by the conversation we've been having in the past couple of weeks. This is someone who not only talks the talk, but has walked the talk. And I'm happy to inform you that you have front row seats in hearing or listening in on our conversation and getting to learn what are some of those money mastery tips that we've covered throughout the entire season that they have used to transform their lives. I'm happy to have you on the show, Laiza Kariuki. Welcome to Money Mastery. We've been really looking forward to having this discussion with you.
Thank you so much, Billy. I'm really excited to be here today. Hello, everybody. My name is Laiza Kariuki. I'm the lead designer and founder at Window Trends. Thank you for having me today.
All right. Thanks once again, Laiza, for joining us. And before maybe we get into the discussion of today, could you tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself? I'm sure many of our audience are curious to know more about yourself.
Wow, thank you. So who is Laiza? Laiza is a little girl brought up in the village of Kirugwe in central Kenya and has this dream as a little girl of making it in life. And fast forward, she comes to Nairobi for schooling, college, Strathmore back then, where I did accounting and practiced none of it, believe it or not. And just has this outlook on life. And along the way, wondering how do we make life happen? And just realizing financial literacy was one of the vehicles that I was going to adapt later on in life. And so I'd say that's how I sit on this seat today, having discovered myself not too late, about 10 years ago. And I'm happy to share my story today with everybody and see how I got where I am today. Thanks, Willy.
All right, wonderful. So, Laiza, we'll get right into today's discussion. And we'd like to start from the area of personal finance management. So, my first question to you today is, what led you to start your financial makeover journey? What led you to start your financial makeover journey?
So let me backtrack you a bit, Willy, and maybe for our viewer, I expound on the business Window Trends. And I'll say Window Trends is an interior decor and soft furnishing company where we specialize in fabrics in your home. Those are your drapes, your mosquito nets, and your bed sheets, and just anything fabric in your house. We've also gone into furniture, which we're starting with upholstery, and we do the after sale of managing your drapes, which is cleaning your drapes and your windows. And that has been part of our expansion plan this year. And going on to how I got into the journey of personal finance, it's really simple for me, really. I was just at a place in life where I was looking to formalize and understand money. So I was earning money in my formal years in employment. I had been earning a salary, but I just realized I didn't have financial literacy, and that gave me a quest to just learn everything and anything there is to know about money. And I chanced upon Centonomy, where is the place I got to learn about money, and where I'm seated here today as an alumni.
Right, wonderful. And on to my next question. So what are some of those lessons that you have implemented this far, and how have they worked out for you?
Please take that again, Willy. I lost you a bit.
Oh, sorry. I was asking, what are those lessons that you have implemented so far, and how have they worked out for you?
Lessons are many. As a woman, let me just first say the first lesson was that I need to take charge of my money and take my life where I want it to go. So in trying to learn how do I save money for a rainy day, how do I invest money to multiply my money, one of the lessons was I joined a circle. I was trying to buffer money for a rainy day where I could borrow to invest in my business now that I run a business. And I also opened a CDS account earlier on in the year. I was looking to buy some Safaricom shares and multiply and just learn that side of things. I'd say I'm learning it, but I have begun it, and those are some of the lessons I have implemented. I also learned about budgeting. Budgeting has been a big one because for me, and in the background, budgeting meant don't do this and don't do that. And however I got to learn that, it's directing your money where you want it to go according to your season and according to your vision for that season. Yep.
All right. So let me push back on budgeting, because I know many times when we are budgeting, you find that we budget for big things. So let's say if you want to buy a particular asset, you may find many people will be budgeting. But let's say this nitty-gritty stuff, like if you're going for a vacation, most of us may not budget for it. So I'm wondering now, given the understanding you have about personal finances and how to build wealth, and probably how to be frugal in how you manage the income that you have right now, what is your current approach to budgeting? Probably you can compare it with how you used to budget before, so that we can have a clear picture of the shift in your mindset or outlook as far as budgeting is concerned.
So in the spirit of keeping it real honest, there was no budgeting, there was spending. So you receive amount X and you go by according to your need and maybe some wants of the day. And of course, following the accounts, then you're in trouble. So what has changed for me is I like that you've alluded to people budgeting for big things. But look, here's the fallacy. Budgeting is just commanding your money. It doesn't matter what it is you're buying. And that for me was the discovery. What is your life like? What season are you in? And how do you command or anticipate where your money will go, so that then you're able to pull strings while you still have the money and not when it is already spent. So I have been able to look at my life, can I say, income and expenses at a glance for 1 year. That has helped me know which are the low seasons and which are the high seasons, so that I can adapt or cover up for the seasons where there'll be low income. And then it also has checked me not to overspend on the season when I have extras. So I'd say that mindset and just knowing that life will happen and at some point there'll be a dip has helped me sort of adapt into the budgeting. And really, I'm not so sure that holidays and vacations are a reality for all of us. It hasn't been my story, but I hope to get there as I learn to budget and keep something on the side as well.
Like the honesty, Liza, especially when you've said it's mostly spending, initially, because I can relate to that as well. And I'm just wondering also, the whole aspect about, developing better habits of managing your finances often involves a mindset shift. And it's usually not easy, especially when, you're used to spending, like you've mentioned, and right now you need to maybe save, and you feel like you did have a lot more disposable income before. Right now, you don't have a lot more disposable income because you want to save. Probably you want to build an emergency fund, things we've talked about during many of the episodes that we've had. And I'm just wondering, in embarking on that journey for you as an individual, what was the motivation? How have you kept yourself motivated as a person to just make those necessary shifts or habit changes that have probably set you on a different and maybe better financial management or financial wealth building path?
Interesting. What keeps me motivated? I just realized whenever the topic of money was mentioned, along the way as I was learning, there was always a time value to money. So what does that say? I'm in my 40s now, and it just says, what would have happened if I'd learned this when I was 20? So one of the motivation is I wish I knew this younger, but since I'm no longer the 20-year-old, I have soon to be 20-year-olds in my house. I have 3 teenage girls. And when I look at them, and the youngest is 5 shots away from her 20s, and the oldest is 3 years away, then I realize I want to learn these things so that I can teach them early. I can change their mindset about money. And as we live out our lives, children more adapt to what they see and hear you talk about than what really you will tell them. So I hope every day I'm living out some beliefs for them, which then they will adapt into their young adult lives, so to say, as they start their careers and into life generally. And then the other one is when you do something right and see how it impacts or how it puts you in a better place than you are in the previous season. When, for instance, you wouldn't budget and now you budget, which means you are able to put a bit of reserves on the side, it just keeps you motivated, because then it means you have more safer days ahead if you keep at it than if you don't. So it's just seeing things work and the practicality of it. And by that, really, let's not make it grandiose. There are small things, like just deciding we're cutting down the budget for meat, and this 1,000 bob we're going to accumulate, and let's see what will be there towards the end of the year. Those are tangible figures and they really look big at the end of the year. However, they are very small, minimalistic decisions. So I'm not saying I forfeited a few millions from buying a house so that then I could do what. No, I'm talking the small money, which then eventually add up to the big monies. And that has been a reality for me, seeing it playing it out on my day-to-day life.
I'm glad to have had you mention about how your family has been a motivator for yourself, your children. You've talked about your children. You've talked about being able to teach them some lessons that would enrich their lives even as they, mature, grow older. And that brings me to my next question about beliefs. I would want to know what probably old beliefs and myths you used to have about money that you have come to overcome, or you have come to see that do not really contribute positively towards your life, that you have changed, and probably what new beliefs have you adopted? Because I'm sure many of us have had things like, money doesn't come easily, or money does not go on trees. That's a famous one. And so many more myths and old beliefs that probably don't serve us as people who want to go or move towards wealth creation. So for you as a person, if I may repeat, what are some of those old beliefs that you have sort of overcome?
So at the introduction, I told you Liza is a girl who was born and bred in the village. And that means I lived a minimal life. And life was okay. There are perspectives about money we didn't have rich, and life was comfortable. For me, one of my parents lived in Nairobi, and so occasionally would come on holiday, and you'd see some grand things, and you want them. So one of the beliefs was you hold on to that day when you will earn money, because you will acquire all these things you can see that you don't have. And of course, that sets you on the wrong trajectory, because you become a spender of money, and money is just about spending. That's all there is to money. So you imagine these people had this money, that's why they are rich, and wealth creation is another story which you never got to hear anywhere. And so that sets you up, and you realize that one of the beliefs you've had, literally on my first salary, really, you're just upgrading on clothes, and even you're in debt for the next income to come, because you're trying to look good. I mean, life is about spending. So that's one of the beliefs, and that's how it played out on my younger self when I started earning. The next belief is, as a woman growing up, you hear, in our era, we grew up a lot hearing that you will get married, and some things and some life organizations were preserved for when people get married. So we never, as our younger selves, or I as my young self, never got to see myself as a possibility doing some things, some investments. Those were never in my radar. They're not things I was curious about. They're not things I grew up hearing. In my case, I didn't see, even as my parents bought chambers, I didn't know how they got them. I never had those conversations. So they're just things I was not empowered to think about. And coming forward until now in my late 30s, as I was transitioning into my 40s, is when now you realize, oh, you can organize, you can take charge of these things. They can be your reality. And slowly I began to work on a money mindset and a wealth creation attitude, where I realized you take charge, and abundant living can be my reality. And I still work at it as being a possibility. And yeah, I'd say those were the mindsets and where I am and working towards it, because I'm not yet there, but a day at a time.
I appreciate that, Liza, and I like the way you've said abundant mindset can be, everyone's reality. So I really like what you're saying. To our audience, especially if you've just joined in, we are talking to Laiza Kariuki, who's giving us her own real life examples on how she has transformed her life through some of the money mastery tips that we've been covering throughout the entire season 3. So please, if you have any questions as we continue on with the show, feel free to send them on the comments section so that we'll get to cover them and we'll get to hear what is Laiza's perspective of whatever inquiry you do have in mind. So we've covered personal finance management. I would like to move into business because Laiza is in business. And my first question to you, Laiza, would be, what was your inspiration to starting your very own business? What was your inspiration? What went through your mind for you to get to that point where you say, okay, all right, I think I'm ready. I know it's a risk probably, but I'm willing to get into business and just see how it turns out for me.
There's no big story to it, really. I just needed money. I was in a season of my life. I was out of work, a young family. But then my daughter was about 5 years old. I had a newborn son, and life is happening. It's the reality. You need an income. So where do you get this money? So you're racking your mind and wondering, what do I have? In that season, I had embarked on a drapes project for my house. Those are curtains for my house. And that time, I only knew of Biashara Street, so I had walked the breadth and the length of it looking for fabric, got something, not my first choice, but I settled on something. They came home, and I really didn't like how they looked. I didn't like the whole process and the hassle I had to go through to get them. And so that is for me dissatisfaction on one hand. And then I had a friend at that time who was dealing some fabrics, and one day I chanced upon them and I didn't know a certain caliber of fabrics existed, which really is what I was looking for. I didn't get in the market. And of course I followed up, where did this come from? And so when I put my dissatisfaction on one hand and this search and this trail of fabrics that I've found, and I put two and two together. I remember I had couple of years, I don't know that I mentioned, but I have a background in construction, interior construction for one of the firms I worked in. So I had been very good at doing site fit outs, interior fit outs, which involves a lot of measurements and custom making of stuff that is construction, aluminium and all that. So I brought that experience for me into this fabrics, and fabrics are really all about just translating measurements into custom making, into the different. So in that season, when I put all that together, I kind of figured, I think I have an idea here. And I'd just say many years later, that's how Window Trends was born, and that was the year 2011.
You're talking about some very important things. So number one, you've mentioned, you are at that point where you feel, I need some money. I'm at a place where I need more money. And I know many of our audience, many of us are in that place where you feel, I actually do need money. And I like also the way you're pointing out that you also look at yourself and you realize, with my background, I have certain skill sets or know-how that I can put into place. Because many times people who want to get in business have to reach to that level where you look at yourself and say, these are my strengths, and probably how can I leverage on them to be able to start a business that will eventually serve my target clientele. So up to that point, my next question would be, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced so far, and probably how have you dealt with them, or how are you continuing to deal with them?
I think business is all about challenges. We literally wake up to solve challenges. I just say that's the background of any business or entrepreneur. Every day, as you left your day yesterday, there was something that cropped up which you wake up to solve the thing. However, the big guns for me is, right now, my biggest challenge is scaling. I'd like to take my business to a next level. What's the challenge there with scaling? It means business is growing. Yes, that's where I'm at. But I have a challenge in how do you resource that, from the money, from the teams, which is the human resource. I did mention that we do clean drapes as an after sale. And windows, there's some equipment that needs to be bought there. So those are finances. So wrapping my head around that from, I wouldn't even say, I'd say a small business and trying to grow big and the big boys becomes a challenge. Stretching that muscle becomes a challenge. However, I thank God for instance like NCBA, where businesses are supported and we can knock doors and have that conversation. But I think it is a real one for me, and it's one I'm tackling currently as I speak. The other challenge is just having a consistent presence in social media. How do I consistently put my brand out there I have been social media shy as a person, and I think that has also informed my outlook as a business. But then again, I'm also in the season of embracing, hey, we can't do everything, we must not know everything. So I'm also learning how to delegate and outsource some of these functions so that other people who that's their core can do it for me, and they'll do it even better than I could ever do. So those are my challenges, and I hope as the year comes to a trail end, I'll have figured them out properly. But I just say yes, business is about challenges, but not to be bogged down by them. Just keep pushing and finding solutions to our challenges every day.
All right. And now, Liza, I know many people today want to start a business. We're in that era where most people are not relying on employment alone. Even those people in employment want to start a business or a side hustle, if you may. So I'm wondering, for you, having been in the business industry, having started a business, what advice would you have for the people who want to start their own advice? What would you tell them so that they can probably have a smoother journey than maybe what you had when you were starting your own business?
So, Willie, I mentioned when I was starting out, I was just looking for money. I just needed to find money. I just wanted to have a paycheck, if you may, and just meet my needs. That's as far as my goals went. That's as far as my vision went at the very beginning. So for that person who's out there and that's their season, number one, what's the thing that I learned then that I'd want you to know? Please formalize at the very beginning as you start business. Your mind can only stretch as far as you can see, as far as your vision goes. So if you're just looking for that income, that's all you will get in that business. But if you formalize, I've coined that term. Don't be fooled by the term SME. SME is sort of playing small, but saying however small, you're a contributor to the GDP of this economy, you're an innovator, you're an employer. And so the sooner you formalize, and if you don't know how to do that, you then learn. You become a learner. You just keep learning for whatever you don't know. Google, anywhere, YouTube, there are all sorts of lessons, but learn how to formalize your business from the word go. Number two, please network. Don't go it alone. There's a lot of resource with other people which you don't have. And then number three for me is, however down you could be today, keep showing up. Keep believing in your vision. Something opens up eventually.
Keep showing up. And I have heard before that, 50% of success is just showing up. So I really appreciate what you're saying. Those are some very interesting examples, real life examples from you, Liza. We appreciate that. To our dear audience, please keep the questions coming. We want to go for a short break to just mull over everything that we've heard from Liza, from her own examples. When we come back, we'll be looking at your questions. So send your questions on the comment section, and we will you shortly. Do not go away.
Candace, what's that?
I brought you a small bonus.
Bonus for what?
Daddy said you helped us get a house, a car, and mommy's business.
But I only helped them get the loans.
You did more than that. You got us 299 family dinners, 64 kisses on the cheek, 12 road trips to see grandma, 42 jokes from daddy, 49 laughs from mommy.
In over 60 years of dealing with numbers, we've learned that the numbers that matter the most to you are the ones that matter the most to us. NCBA Bank. Go for it.
Welcome back to NCBA Money Mastery from the bank that says go for it. We have been speaking to Laiza Kariuki, who is a director at Window Trends, and she's been giving us her own real life examples on how she has used some of the money mastery tips that we've been covering throughout the entire season 3 on how to improve financially, how to make smart money decisions. And we were covering before the break some aspects about business and getting to hear what are her own personal stories on how she's navigating, the stormy waters of business. And Liza, coming back to you, my next question is, how have you kept yourself going? We all know that business is not a bed of roses. There are many challenges that come here and there. And so I'm wondering, or I know our audience would like to know, how have you kept yourself going? How have you kept yourself motivated and on track towards achieving your goals as a business?
Willy, I don't know if you can hear me. I've lost you. So I'd like you to retake that question kindly.
Sure, I can hear you properly. So, Laiza, I was asking, given that you have been in business, and we all know that business sometimes can have its fair share of challenges. After all, you're your own boss. People are now relying on you. If you've come out from employment, probably you weren't used to having everyone look up to you for all the tough decisions of the business, for the wages you have to pay probably at the end of the month, not considering there will be many other costs that you may have to deal with, as a business owner. So my question to you is, what has been keeping you going? What has been motivating you as a person to just remain on track and keep believing in your business goals and keep pursuing your business goals and targets? Liza, can you hear me? Liza, can you hear me? So to our dear audience, just give us a minute as we try to get Liza back online. And like we were just discussing, we are looking at business. We are talking to Laiza Kariuki, who's the director of Window Trends. And what we'd like to know is just her personal real life stories on how she's been dealing with business, dealing with personal finance management. We've covered many topics on our season 3. So we started with men and money. We went to women and money. We covered assets and flowsets, and we talked about what is an asset, what is a flowset. We went to entrepreneurship. We've talked about the creative economy. In our last episodes, we are looking at retrenchment and retirement. So there's been a lot that we've been trying to just cover, and a lot of information we've been trying to give you. And today we thought it necessary to have someone at least who has been through all this, who has practiced all these things that we've been trying to say. And I'm sure you've had Liza talking about some of the challenges she's facing in business. She's talked about scaling, she's talked about social media, and she's even been willing to tell us, that as an individual, yes, she may be shy, but she has understood the need to separate herself as a person and the business. And therefore, Liza, I can see you're back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Willy, can you hear me?
Wonderfully, yes, I can hear you. So my next question to you was, what keeps you going as a business person? We understand that business is a bit difficult. So what keeps you going despite business not being a bed of roses? What motivates you to wake up every morning and go at it and try to achieve the targets that you have as a business and as an individual? And especially given the current challenges that we are facing, we all know that we're in the COVID period. So what motivates you as a person and also as a business?
Wow, motivation is quite the term. So I'd say for me, reviews from my clients, really every time you serve one person and they have one positive thing to say, when they have a smile on their faces that you delivered to their expectation, when they show up yet again for another project from their last, there's no other motivation I need. It doesn't matter the size of project. At that point, I'm just happy that you satisfied someone's need. When you see that your business is solving a tangible need, then you go out at it again tomorrow and again and again. And for me, it's been 10 years in of repeat, reset, do the same thing again. The other one is the transformation of families from a community setup. When you see business done right, and what it translates to, I was just speaking shortly about scaling, and I imagine what impact that would have if I get it right on my family, and to see other businesses represented by people around me do the same, then it's a motivation to just keep committed and keep growing and learning how to do business the right way, and just keep going to network and know what the next person knows and the next one does, because it's a vision and we have to get there, and I don't want to get there alone, alongside the people around me. The other one is my children. They are soon going to be young adults, like I mentioned, And I can see some of them adapting into the business. But remember, there are things I say when my day is at the end of day. So do I go and say, okay, we don't have school fees, business was bad, and that's the sum total of our conversation? Or are they perpetually learning a few things of how to do business, right? Are they seeing the impact of myself doing business in their lives, when it's opening day and you're able to put in that school fee check? And for them, because they're all fully aware that you're doing business and they have all these inquisitive questions, that keeps me going at it. They're watching me. It doesn't matter what I'm telling them. They can see me every day. If that can change their mindset from mine, remember I gave you a background. If it can set them differently when they're young adults, then that's a motivation right there for me. And the other one is I am a people person. I have a lot of people around me. If I can only impact a few and their lives would be changed by how I do my business, how I maybe interact with their business from mine. So business to business and person to person, then that I'll have done something, and for me it will make sense at the end of it all. So every time when I put all those in one pot, they just make me show up again and again and again.
All right, now Liza, if you search today in Google and you search, say, how to succeed in business or in entrepreneurship, you'll get so many search results. You'll get 10 tips on how to succeed, 15 tips on how to be a good business person, and the list goes on. But I'm wondering, and I'd like to hear from you as someone who's been in business, what is the one thing you know today? What is the one thing you know today about succeeding in entrepreneurship that you wish you knew when you were starting a business?
Really, there are so many things, but let me stick to the rules. You asked for the one thing. The one thing for me really is don't go it alone. Don't go it alone. You will make it far. So then let me break it down. As I forgot somewhere in the intro to just tell you, I am involved in community. I'm a community leader in my residents association. I currently serve as the chair of Kiseria Nongata Rongai Residents Association. And within that, as much as we are a voice to bring down policies that will impact our community and our environment positively, we have an arm of it, which is market. So we trade. And that has really encouraged to see how businesses, so let me give a background a little bit. Let me backtrack a bit, sorry. We were in zone of COVID. COVID threw people off balance. They didn't know what the next day would look like. But trust me, in that community was adaptation for us. Guys were trading from their houses. The cottage industry, someone is baking cake, another one is selling honey, another one has meats, another one is bringing more sick. Many businesses are represented, and that is in Ongata Rongai. But for me, the reality of fully fledged, some which didn't have stores, have stores now. Income was there for people. Remember that time we're not going into supermarkets, so we were averse to mixing. So this model of business really worked, and that became like a stepping stone for most of them who were starting. Some went back and downgraded back into their homes, but that for me has been the one thing. Then I imagine if we were not in this network in such a season, we didn't know how COVID would pan out. But I look back at that 1 year, people have survived like that. And so to say, don't walk alone. For me, I wasn't alone. I have gotten myriad of clients from that. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. We are a close-knit community to date. We do business within ourselves. You first ask for a service provider within that group before you can go out. It's reality for many families. So the sum total is don't walk it alone. Just see who can hold your hand. Somebody knows what you don't know if you're struggling. Somebody has what you don't have if it's a resource you need. And somebody will give you an idea that you didn't have. Just don't start it alone.
That is very inspiring, Liza, and I'm actually inspired. I like what you're saying on how you have, not just walked alone, but tried to also make a difference within the community. And you've touched on COVID, which is so true and has affected many businesses. And we are happy that at least from your own sphere of influence, there is something positive that you are doing. And well, you've said it best, don't walk alone, walk with people. And I'd like to jump in and just say here at NCBA, that's what we do. And that's why we have Liza here. We're not trying to walk alone. Even in this journey, we're trying to walk with people. And I encourage also our audience who want to succeed in entrepreneurship. But the question was, what's the one thing for succeeding in entrepreneurship? And Liza just said, work with people, find people you can collaborate with, and who knows how things can turn out for you. So Laiza, on to my next question is, as a business person, many times when we have been talking about entrepreneurship in this season, we've covered the big challenge of having irregular income. So one day, let's say you get a bumper harvest, the next day it's sort of quote unquote famine because there is no, let's say, work. Clients, for whatever reason, are not buying your products or services, or are not coming to you. Just going back to the issue of COVID, many businesses have been affected because our clients also are affected. And therefore, how do you manage, or how do you approach the whole issue of irregular income as a business?
Wow, that's a very real issue for me right now, Willy. So it's interesting you ask. And now I think you can even add it's not just the irregular income, but even the expenses have somewhat become irregular. For me, case in point is school fees. Now we've come from previous year where we dealt 3 terms in a year. This year we're having to do 4 terms of school fees, and school fees hasn't changed. It's the same, and there are 4 terms. The income remains if it's not for the worst case where it's even non-existent. So that's a very real and challenging place we find ourselves as entrepreneurs and even people in employment, because most people have fallen out of work, they're not employed. So I feel it and it pains my heart. However, how have I dealt with it? Or am I attempting to deal with it? Guys, don't be fooled. I'm still trying to figure out some of these things, but I'll speak about them from my perspective. So what have I done? I have put my expenses. I'm trying to look at my year in perspective. What's my 12 months from now looking like? Put all those expenses, number one, together, and then look at the income. Now we are in business, so income is not consistent. However, I have found the challenge. When I find that compared to last year, I've put together my budget or even projected expenses and they are way higher, then I go back and I don't settle just on the irregular income that's going to come. Yes, it's going to be regular. Realize it challenges me to approach it differently and now begin to punch higher. So if there are targets, I push them harder. If you realize you're in a good season, then you maximize on that season and then you budget the money for the year. And if you're not able to do for the year, you can start with the quarter. Because when you do per month, then that's how you end up with a good month and end up spending on capital expenses within that year, only to struggle with recurrent expenditure the next month. So that looking at a year in advance for me has helped. And I have not yet perfected it, but I figured out that's where the crux of the matter will be. But I'd also say it has forced me to then increase revenue streams. Some of those things I mentioned, like upholstery, is one of the things that we are launching. It was brought about when I was looking, how else do we earn money in this business while we've maximized on these others? So you're always finding yourself in a place of necessity, which then becomes the mother of invention. Just keep reinventing and just don't give up. Just keep showing up, but yes, plan for a longer period. Yours could be 6 months, could be 3 months, because again, we're in different seasons. I'm in a very high season of high school fees now. I am dealing with 5 kids. Your season could be different. You could have just started out and you're by yourself. So you're in a saver season. So just understand your season and work with that. And then now standardize for 6 months, quarter, or a year.
That is very elaborately explained, Laiza, and thank you for that. It's that time of the show where we get to look at the questions from our audience. I know this has been an interesting one, and I can see so many questions already. So, Laiza, allow me to get right into the question. And the first question is from Maxine. Thank you for tuning in. And Maxine is asking, can you give any advice for entrepreneurs who are struggling with cash flow?
Me being one of them. So how have I solved mine? I have just alluded to the fact that I found myself in a season where monies are owed and they're not coming through. So you find that was your projection of 3 months to come. The 3 months are over and here you are and there's no money. So I find that my reality has been I have to invent. I have to find another revenue stream within the business, or even as a person, you innovate and look for a totally different stream of income. Half of the time, if you just look at what we have, and let me speak from a first person, there are always ideas we have at the back of our minds really that we really don't explore because maybe we're in a season of comfort. But now that day, you're really in trouble or things are just looking mayhem ahead, then you begin to activate those little ideas that you had. And half the time you realize, I mean, if you just look at the stories of businesses and ideas that have been actioned, you find there were subtle, non-serious things. So it's just to say, so it's one hand that you're having an issue with cash flow. Cash flow meaning either payments haven't come in, which could be an issue with just an economy lock, or could just be that business is down. We've just had a lot of parents paying school fees, so then they'll not be spending depending on your kind of business. If you're not in a necessity kind of product, then they'll not be spending. So then how do you anticipate that? So I'd say then having multiple sources of income helps. And it's not necessarily always just even within your business. There's still one way or another which you could expand. In my case, it's trying to venture into furniture, which we were not. So we've now actively taken into upholstery because ours is all about fabrics. We were doing drapes. So why not do the seats? And yes, that has opened up. So you see, I had this idea, it was just sitting there, but because then we found ourselves in a cash flow challenge, we had to expand in that way. So for me, that has been my reality. I hope you find yours. Thanks, Maxine.
All right, moving on to the next question. And this is from Paul. Paul, thank you for tuning in. And Paul is asking, what were the steps you took to make your hobby a legitimate functioning company? I'll repeat that. What were the steps you took to make your hobby a legitimate functioning company?
So let me start by saying I was not legitimizing my hobby, Paul. That's not where it began, because then at that point you want to know what are those formal steps, and it becomes now a whole science. So let me break it down. For me, that's not what it was. Every day I just went out to do something I liked. I went to do something I liked, and then one day a friend offered to pay for this service. So that got it like sort of opened me up to, oh, okay, people can pay for this kind of hobby. I mean, it's just a hobby. You actually, for me, I was helping out a friend. So you're just doing this thing and helping them out. But then they say, and I'm willing to pay. You don't even know what to charge for it. So I'd say, what are the steps now in retrospect? Keep pushing yourself out there to do that which you love, because by the time it's a hobby, it's something you love to do, and I'm sure you do it for free. I was ready to do it for free, and I did it over and over and over. What is that helping you? You're fine-tuning the skill. You're fine-tuning it because it starts raw. People begin to see it formalized and looking good to the point that they are willing to pay. You just need one person to pay you once. You don't, for me, I didn't ask for the payment. Someone offered and then referred, and then I had now to go on to research on how do you charge. I didn't know how to charge. So I just say, put yourself out there, keep practicing your skill, keep polishing that skill, keep then research. Maybe for you can even be upfront. Now that I was not aware I was legitimizing a hobby, then you go out there and find how do you monetize that thing which you do, how have other people done it, and then begin to do it and getting a pay. This whole part of legitimizing, for me, it's just like 2 years ago. I've incorporated my business less than 6 months ago. And I've been 10 years in business. So I was running as a business name all this while. So to just say, yes, it's been a hobby which you've been paid for over and over and over again. But at the point where I got, because for me, formalizing and learning structures, I did that midway, then at that point is when you'll think about legitimizing. I feel like if you go strictly into the science of doing it, you lose it. And remember why it's a hobby is because it's something you love to do. Don't lose the love for what you do in the quest for legitimizing. Then now, small steps, you will find yourself there and you'll have a fully fledged company. The many people who pay for that service, then slowly they'll propel you to want to formalize it.
Laiza, our next question is from Lonel, and Lonel is asking, how can small businesses mitigate against the uncertainties of the market and the operating environment? Allow me to repeat that. How can small businesses mitigate against the uncertainties of the market and their operating environment?
Wow, I just say adaptability. The beauty about a small business is you the dynamics are not grand. If you, for instance, we're talking of COVID and people had to close businesses, in terms of square foot, small businesses don't have big spaces. So guess what? You can wake up and make that decision that we'll close this shop and now we're going to make these cakes if you're in the baking business, and we're going to do for this season when we really don't know what's going on, we're going to do it from home. So I feel we have an upper hand in that coining term of small business, that every day be adaptable, and then your decision making is quick. You're not consulting a whole board of 10 people and the decision has to take 2 weeks as your rent is accruing on whether you're closing or not. So I'd say adaptability is the next one. Always be ready to make decisions on the go, and the uncertainties of the market is always be on top of the trends in your sector. What were the trends last year? I know COVID didn't have any trend we can follow, and for COVID, I'd just say the cover was adaptability. How quickly you can adapt was the game changer for most businesses. However, when business stabilizes and we are back, we're about to go into an election year. That's a trend. We already know what happens in an election year. There's just no movement. People are in a wait and see kind of scenario. So just see in your industry, how has it looked like in the previous seasons of an electioneering year? Then that way you're early prepared on what eventuality. Where do you trade your business from? Is it one of the areas where, for instance, violence has been prone? Do you want in advance to consider the possibility of moving? Put your ear on the ground, just hear what people are saying. Again, I said we network. Let's hear how other people have adopted. Sometimes people merge for a season. So I just say adaptability, how quickly you can make changes in your business, and then the trends that have been are some of the ways I feel small businesses can adapt.
Thank you for that, Laiza. And on to our last question, and this is from Grace Wambui. Grace, we are happy that you've tuned in for the show. And Grace is asking, how do you decide what to pay yourself while ensuring you still have sufficient income to grow the business? I'll repeat that. How do you decide what to pay yourself while ensuring you still have sufficient income to grow the business?
That's tricky, really. Grace, I hear you, and that's a challenge. For a very long time for me in my business, I didn't pay myself, but the truth is I was not paying myself. I was just making drawings and paying bills directly and saying you're not paying yourself. However, when I said earlier on, one of the things I had learned in personal finance was to separate money, is to decide, however minimalistic, just have a figure, which then will push you to keep. Because you see, let's make it real. If you decide today you're going to pay yourself 20,000 and your business is generating sales worth 20,000, you see, then that's unrealistic. But what does it mean if then you've set your salary at 20? It pushes you to work on bigger targets and push your business to give you 50 so that you can pay yourself 20 and you have the 30 remaining to then run the business. And then, so to say, sometimes the solution is not that target you place is to push you, is what propels you to want to earn more. In one of the things I've learned in my attempt to abundant lifestyle is that I get to determine what I earn. Now, that's not as simple as placing a figure. It's just putting in the work that is needed to attain certain figures. Some of them are still out there. There are still figures I see and wish to attain them, but however, they become my drive every day. So I feel that figure you set for yourself just speaks to where you want to go, and it just pushes you to push your business to that level. And remember, as you pay yourself, you're not just paying yourself as you grow, you then have employees within that business, and that propels your growth. And I'd like to put it in that perspective so that I'm not giving you a solution and saying, okay, then if you want this figure, then no, it's not the magic. We have to put in the work. But that figure helps us push ourselves harder, where maybe we were being soft or we were not maximizing on our opportunities. Yeah, so that's my take on that. Thanks, Grace.
That is quite an interesting perspective, Liza, and I appreciate that. Before we wind up, do you have any parting shots for our dear audience?
My parting shot. I think having come from a COVID season, the one thing that comes to mind is our adaptability. So, I mean, the reality of life will happen, really. Life will have its highs but for sure a law is coming. So how quickly do we adapt? COVID has taught us that the survivors are the ones who adopted earlier on. Some are adapting now, some really are not seeing the light of day. Because life is a certainty, just plan for those eventualities. Let's learn to adapt, and that word is loosely thrown there because I know it's not magic to adapt. There are some realities, but what I mean is, if you're flogging a dead horse and you have this business a year in and it's not giving you returns, even deciding to close that business is a good decision at that point, because you stop pumping in money and resources into something that's not giving you a return, and it frees you to then go look elsewhere for other ideas you've been sitting on, which could be your cash cow. So just learning adaptability and always asking yourself, are you doing the right thing for that season? And just keeping that question burning so that when things are not working, then adaptability is one of them. But then, however, when things are working, is then to say you're in business for the long haul. So what's your growth trajectory? What do you see 1 year, 2 years, 10 years from now? Can you have that plan so that then you can begin to resource as you're having a good run now? You begin to resource for those years and for that journey you're about to embark on. So there are things I'm learning, there are things I'm implementing. I'm really here as a student of life myself on some of these scenarios. Now there are points to note in my mind. So as to go out there together as we figure them out. And I hope we meet each other on the streets of entrepreneurship. And, I'll be glad to hear, oh, I answered that question and this is where you got me, or how you challenged me to think about this and this is where I have gotten. I'll be happy to hear that story. And hopefully I'll have a story to tell myself of the challenges I shared today and what I don't know what to do about them and how I'll have solved them that time. So let's just learn to adapt. It's what the reality is today for us as entrepreneurs. And let's remember not to walk it alone. Yeah, so those would be my party shots, really.
All right. Thank you very, very, very much, Laiza Kariuki. I must say that I really appreciate how you have been real with us, given us your own real life examples, and just being willing to tell us as it is. So thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you so much for your commentaries and your feedback to all the questions that we had in store for you. To our dear audience, I also must say that I'm very appreciative that you have walked with us through the entire journey of season 3 Money Mastery. We covered so many topics and you have been with us. You've kept these shows exciting and engaging. We've loved your questions and comments, and therefore I just want to say thank you so much to you who has been listening to us through the entire season. I just want to appreciate you for being with us through the entire season 3 of NCBA Money Mastery. That's all the time we had on this final episode of NCBA Money Mastery, powered by Centonomy. I'd like to urge you to send us any comments or feedback you have on this season 3 through our email address, personalbanking@ncbagroup.com. I repeat, that's personalbanking@ncbagroup.com. I also want to request you to take a few minutes to just check out our services and products on our website. That's ncbagroup.com. I repeat, ncbagroup.com. You can also call the numbers on your screen and talk to one of our representatives. And finally, like, follow, and subscribe to our social media handles. I have been your host, Willy Mahumu. And before I go, I'd also like to just urge you or plead with you to just be on the lookout for more programs from NCBA regarding money mastery and financial literacy and personal financial management. I can promise you we have a lot of impactful initiatives lined up for you in the future. Until we meet next to discuss some more numbers that matter to you, goodbye. Please stay safe and have an excellent day.